Back to the evening shows. Margot out of town. She was in town the last few days, so we were out and about in San Francisco. I did some earlier stuff. We went to the Giants game. We did it live from there, but now I can sit down here, studio-like setup, and we can move forward with our training camp coverage. I want to talk a little bit about Trey Lance and set it up for a bigger Q&A today. So have all your questions ready. They don't have to be specific to Trey Lance, but the Trey Lance truth. I mean, we just have to reset things a little bit. Everybody's going crazy. I think some unwarranted attacks. I mean, what's the point here? I mean, the national media really does see the 49ers as a lightning rod for attention, the Trey Lance situation as a lightning rod for attention, but really nothing that out of the ordinary has happened here. Draft picks struggle, draft picks who are a result of valuable trades struggle. Injuries in football happen, bad breaks in football happen, and a lot of stuff has kind of conspired in the Trey Lance and the 49ers situation. A lot of good stuff has conspired for the 49ers too to help them make up for the lack of productivity from Lance, and they're sitting here now with multiple quarterbacks, especially Brock Purdy. He's the leader. Then they have Trey Lance and they have Sam Darnold behind them. So the problems aren't as wild as people make them out to be, and I just wanted to reset things. I feel that I don't really chime in on this as much as everybody else because it's just like beating a dead horse over and over and over again. We know the truth with Trey Lance, and it is a lot simpler than people make it out to be. Go for Broke, who is one of our good viewers, he's commenting, he's doing my work for me. Why don't we just put what Go for Broke is putting up on the screen? Don't we already know the truth about Trey Lance? Is comment number one. That's the intro comment. Comment number one is he was drafted in 2021, third overall. He busted the index finger on his throwing hand at a preseason game his rookie year. He was named the starter for the 2022 season. All true. He broke his right ankle in the first quarter of the game against Seattle in week 2. He's battling for QB2 in 2023. He really hasn't played that much either in college or the NFL. Yeah, you're right. All of these things, that's pretty much what I was going to say. I could put my titles on here now, but the Trey Lance truth, I would say a summary here. It's totally possible that neither the 49ers nor Lance have made some kind of critical error in his development. Sometimes bad breaks just happen, and Go for Broke just outlined what happened with Trey Lance. Shows up in 2021 as a really raw prospect who hasn't played that much out of North Dakota State. The 49ers plan to groom him behind Jimmy Garoppolo, but he breaks his finger against the Raiders in week 3 of the preseason. I think a lot of people are forgetting the fact that Kyle Shanahan was getting very ambitious that training camp and that preseason with package plays for Trey Lance. And it wasn't just the Lance package. It was like rotating Lance in with Jimmy Garoppolo ahead of that week 3 game and then during that week 3 game of the preseason against the Raiders. That, though, is where the finger was broken. He hit it off of a helmet against the Raiders. And because of that, I think that we saw a heavily curtailed usage of the Trey Lance situational appearances over the course of that season. And that's what put him behind the developmental 8 ball. He was eminently raw coming out of North Dakota State. The 49ers already had a good quarterback in Jimmy Garoppolo. They had Super Bowl aspirations in 2021. So they had a thread and needle, right? They had to find a way to get Lance involved while not tanking their Super Bowl chances because he was so raw. And the idea was they're going to play him with Jimmy Garoppolo, giving Garoppolo the lion's share of time, but fitting Trey Lance in creatively. We'll never know how that would have gone because Lance did break his finger in week 3. And the 49ers really did a good job of covering up the extent of that injury for a long time. But it did affect Lance when he had to make a start in place of Garoppolo against Arizona. I believe that was in week 5. And then in week 16 in place of Garoppolo against the Houston Texans. That one was a win for Trey Lance. Now, I saw a terrible take on the internet today that the 49ers wasted 2021 for Trey Lance. They could have developed him then, but they didn't have a chance to win anyway. It's like, what are you talking about? I couldn't even believe how bad this take was. The 49ers were 10 points ahead in the NFC Championship game in that 2021 season in the fourth quarter. And that's even with their quarterback, Jimmy Garoppolo, playing with 2 major injuries to his throwing arm, the torn thumb ligament, and obviously the shoulder injury that ended up keeping him with the 49ers the next year because he had to have shoulder surgery. So you can't tell me that the 49ers weren't legitimate Super Bowl contenders. If they almost won the NFC, they had a lead, a double-digit lead in the fourth quarter with a heavily injured quarterback. So the 49ers were completely right in 2021 to stick with Jimmy Garoppolo and not go into rebuilding mode for Trey Lance. You have to capitalize on your window when it's there, and the window was definitely there in 2021. So bad breaks do happen. They happened to Jimmy Garoppolo in 21. They happened to Trey Lance in 2021 with the finger injury. And then it happened again to Trey Lance in 2022. They were proceeding with the plan after the 21 season. They moved to Trey Lance as the starting quarterback that offseason. But the offseason didn't go all that smoothly because he's coming back from the finger injury still, which ended up being a little bit more complicated than the 49ers had hoped that it would be. And then the ankle happened. That was week 2 of 2022. So now we find ourselves in 2023 with Brock Purdy having emerged in the interim. Purdy's better than Trey Lance ever was. Has Lance gotten a chance to be that good? No, probably not. But this is the NFL, and you're judged based on what you have done, not on your potential. Teams have to go with something tangible, especially when that tangible something is as impressive as Brock Purdy's resume of work. But that's not to say that Trey Lance is an extraneous member of this 49ers team. I mean, 49ers fans should know this better than anyone. How helpless did you feel when those quarterback injuries happened to both Brock Purdy and to Josh Johnson, and that was preceded by the Jimmy Garoppolo and Trey Lance injuries? How helpless did you feel when the 49ers ran out of quarterbacks in the NFC Championship game? I'm sure you felt pretty damn helpless when Christian McCaffrey was throwing to nobody. So the 49ers want to avoid the past. They don't want that to repeat itself. That means they want multiple good quarterbacks available. They can groom Trey Lance to be one of those good quarterbacks at their disposal. Maybe not as a starter anymore, but bad breaks have happened. The development has been slowed down, obviously, but there's still potential here, and there still is potential depth here. That's the key. Potential depth, because you definitely need it at the quarterback position. So I don't think this is nearly as controversial as people are making it out to be. This is strictly business. This is the cutthroat nature of the NFL. You've got to move on with a better option if that better option presents itself, even while somebody's hurt. Yeah, somebody can get Wally pipped. It could definitely happen. And if you want to call it that with Brock Purdy and Trey Lance in the NFL, you can call it that. But the 49ers are simply making the best decisions they can as a chaotic situation, which is the norm of the NFL. It's a chaotic situation at all times as the chaotic lifestyle of the NFL unfolds. So that is the Trey Lance truth. This is a 49ers Q&A. Why don't we open it up to your questions? Mike says, smash that like button. Hell yeah, let's do it. All right, I'm ready for questions about anything. We could talk about Lance. I know a lot of people that watch this probably think that the Lance stuff is beating a dead horse at this point, so I don't mind if we don't talk about Lance. I know it's in the title. I think I've covered everything I have to with Trey Lance. I'm looking forward to seeing him play on Saturday against the Denver Broncos. He's going to get the second half. He probably has a chance to look a little bit better. He's probably going to be going against worse defenders than he did in week 1 of the preseason with the Raiders because he was playing in the first half of that game. We're probably going to see some Brock Purdy. I would say a series or two. Then it's going to move to Sam Darnold. And then it's going to move to Trey Lance. I think Deommodore Lenoir has looked good at nickel. I mean, remember, Deommodore Lenoir started the 2022 season for the 49ers at nickel week 1 before they moved Jimmy Ward back there because Jimmy Ward was hurt at the start of the season. So they needed Lenoir to play inside for the 49ers. They also, well, actually, didn't they had Samuel Womack inside as well. It was Samuel Womack at first, but then Lenoir got a look as well early in that 2022 season. So it's been an interesting ride for the 49ers at the nickelback spot ever since they lost K'Wan Williams. They needed that spot badly to beat the Rams in week 18 of the 2021 season. That's when Darqueze Dennard came in off the street and delivered. But then Dennard just ran out of gas last training camp. He was an aging veteran, so Darqueze Dennard was on his way out. They cut him before the season started. Then they had to scramble a bit. So you talked about Samuel Womack, who really showed out last training camp, had that interception against the Packers, obviously. And you talk about the other options they had there. Deommodore Lenoir, finally Jimmy Ward played the slot for the 49ers before he signed with the Texans. Then they signed Isaiah Oliver this offseason, but Oliver's a different body type than Ward, and K'Wan Williams a little bit bigger. They've decided they probably want a little bit more coverage skill in there, potentially a pair with Isaiah Oliver. It doesn't mean they're kicking Isaiah Oliver off the team altogether, but they can run a dual nickel kind of situation. And if that does happen, well, Deommodore Lenoir might be the best option if you kick him inside. If Ambry Thomas can, in those nickel situations, take over for Demo on the outside corner spot, or if Samuel Womack can take over on the outside. Samuel Womack obviously has some positional versatility there. So really interesting times for the 49ers at nickelback. I don't think the 49ers trade Lance before week 1 because I just don't know what the market for him is. Now, maybe he just lights the world on fire over the next couple of weeks and the market grows stronger for him. But in that case, wouldn't you want to keep him if you're the 49ers? Don't you want good quarterbacks on your roster a year after you ran out of them? So I think either way, there is a lot of value for the 49ers to maintain and keep Trey Lance on the roster. And they're really going to have to be blown away by an offer for him to not be on the roster. I mean, everybody knew when he was drafted, this was going to be a developmental project. Just because that development has been stalled for a couple of years doesn't mean that expectation and that truth still hold firm, right? And I think even now more than ever, the 49ers are in a mode where they want multiple good quarterbacks on this roster. So I think there's a chance that Trey Lance is traded for sure, but I don't think it's a very high one. Yeah, where would Lance even go? That's another thing. Like who would want a quarterback right now with so many questions who's been hurt the past couple of years? Remember, the contractual situation here is that all of his money is fully guaranteed. He was the number 3 overall pick. That is an expensive deal. So somebody's going to have to inherit a very expensive deal for a player who hasn't produced much of anything in the NFL. 49ers would be happy to get rid of that deal if somebody were to ship over draft picks on top of it, right? But at this point, like if you had to trade him right now, I think that Trey Lance might have to, the 49ers might have to ship picks away with Trey Lance to get somebody to inherit that contract. And I just don't think it's worth it for the 49ers because he presents value to them. He is a quarterback in the QB room that was decimated by injuries last year. Why are people obsessed with Brock Purdy's interceptions in practice? Isn't the whole point of training camp and practice to test the limits and try new things while gaining knowledge of what can or can't be done during a real game? Yes, and thank you, TNK Hunting Gear. That is exactly what practice is for. Listen to this. Brock Purdy has an interception rate of about 5% at practice this season. Last year, he had an interception rate of 5.9%. So he threw more picks per attempts last season. Yet Kyle Shanahan was still impressed enough to put Purdy on that 53-man roster last season. By all accounts, Purdy's training camp was an excellent one in 2022 with a higher interception rate than this year's. Now, get this too. Brock Purdy's interception rate during the 2022 season, during actual games, was only 1.7%. So he threw way fewer picks in the regular season than he did in camp. What you do in the regular season is much more important than what you do in camp. On top of that, people will say, well, there were some dropped picks. Okay, fine. Let's look at turnover-worthy plays. That includes dropped picks. It's a stat from Pro Football Focus. Brock Purdy ranked in the top 10 out of least turnover-worthy plays, number 7 last year. So by all accounts, Brock Purdy did a good job taking care of the football in 2022. And by all accounts, wringing your hands over interceptions here in 2023 training camp is ridiculous because you saw what Brock Purdy did last year. He threw a lot of picks in camp, but he's pushing limits. He's letting it rip. Kyle Shanahan has said the same thing about Purdy and Trey Lance. They're getting fair treatment from Kyle Shanahan here. He said that he likes that Trey Lance lets it rip when he threw what should have been an interception against the Raiders. And he likes that Brock Purdy's letting it rip at practice. And he's not sitting there counting interceptions in situations that don't count. The preseason doesn't count. Practice doesn't count. This is a situation where you work on what you need to work on for the situations that don't count, for the situations that do count. Situations that don't count are where you work on stuff for the situations that do count. And I think that T&K hunting gear had a great point. Stephen P says, smash that like button. Hell yeah, let's do it. What if Darnold and Allen look better in the preseason? Then what do the 49ers do? Well, that's a really good question because it might be hard to carry four quarterbacks, right? And you definitely want to keep all the good quarterbacks that you can in the room. You could trade one of Darnold or Allen as well. That's possible because Allen was a QB2 last year for Cincinnati. He's been QB2 for multiple seasons. So the 49ers might have a surplus of quality talent in the quarterback room, especially if Darnold shows out here over the next couple days, because we know that he's got the pedigree of a number 3 pick. Athletically, he does have some of that ability. So it'd be a good problem for the 49ers to have. Let's see how it plays out over the next couple weeks. Injuries can always happen. You can also carry 4 if you really want to. Maybe it's not a permanent thing for all 17 weeks. Almost certainly wouldn't be a permanent thing, but maybe you carry 4 for 2 weeks of the regular season, and then somebody goes down elsewhere. Quarterback gets hurt. Then you're in a good prime position of leverage to make a trade. The 2000 New England Patriots carried 4 quarterbacks. The 4th quarterback on their 53-man roster was a man named Tom Brady. That worked out okay for the Patriots. So that's just a way to illustrate what can happen. Do I think the 49ers offensive line will be an issue? I think offensive line depth is an issue for everyone in the NFL. So the team that has the best depth, and last year, I don't think it was a coincidence that you saw Philadelphia, great O-line, great depth up front, and Kansas City, great O-line, great depth up front. They were the 2 teams going after it in the Super Bowl. I mean, even Patrick Mahomes needs that good offensive line to win, right? We saw an offensive line that was basically missing everyone in the 2020 season for Patrick Mahomes against Tampa Bay, and they got their asses kicked. The Chiefs did. So the 49ers offensive line, the starting 5, especially outside of McKivitz, I think is going to be solid. And we got to see McKivitz and Burford, especially on that right side, work together. That's a hurdle to clear. But then it's that depth hurdle that they have to clear. Which guys are going to step up, make that 53-man roster to make this offensive line a deep and viable unit that can run the marathon of the NFL season? I think that Washington State or Stanford will win the Pac this year. Well, it's not the Pac-4 quite yet, right? It's still going to have all of its 12 teams this year. I have no idea. I don't really follow Pac-12 football anymore. I used to before. Stanford's got a new coach, though. I think it might take them a little while to reload, but we'll see. Good question. Ilm Manning is looking good. The question is, I think, will the 49ers take 8 or 9 offensive linemen? If they take 9, come on down, Ilm Manning. But I think they definitely want him for at least the practice squad. He's been really, really impressive. Playing tackle for them, I think they view him as a guard long term, but maybe he can be a versatile lineman a la Daniel Brunskill for the 49ers, right? He was a player who played all 5 positions. And Ilm Manning, clean sheet at left tackle. He's doing all the drills with the tackle so far for the 49ers. He's 6'2", though, so they're looking at him as a guard for the long term. But as long as he could ride this out at tackle, that's fine for the 49ers because they need bodies there right now. Now, Ilm at Hawaii, they thought he was going to move inside the guard too, but he just kept on delivering a tackle, and he ended up starting 40 games over his college career at tackle. So left tackle, that's where he's been playing for the 49ers on the 3rd team. I do see the 49ers going after the O-line in the next draft because they have a first-round pick again. I think that's where you zero in on a tackle. I think they didn't like any of the prospects enough. They didn't think they would translate this year later in the draft. I think they would have liked prospects a little bit higher up in the draft for that tackle spot. They generally use premium draft capital on tackles. You saw with Mike McGlinchey back in 2018. And when that happened, the 49ers said, okay, we're going to do a short-term filler signing of Colton McKivitz. He could take over this position for at least one more season. And they said next year we have a top draft pick. And with that top draft pick next year, a first rounder, the 49ers probably will have the capital to get a good prospect at tackle to move on forward. '49ers don't need a franchise tag Bosa. Nick Bosa is on a 5th-year option. So he's under contract for the 2023 season. That's why he's getting fined right now for not showing up because he's supposed to be at training camp. But they're probably going to forgive the fines once he does sign his extension. He wants an extension, even though he's already under contract for about $18 million this season. Are the 49ers keeping Ross Dwelly? I think so. I mean, Cameron Latu, it's not good with those drops. Dwelly's been dependable. He had a good game. 6 separate 1-year contracts for Ross Dwelly with the 49ers. And I think he's going to stay with the team here through the cut down, at least on the practice squad, right? But the dependability and the veteran status probably make him put him on that inside track here for the 53-man roster, given the struggles we've seen from Cam Latu. Yeah, I think Bosa's agent, Brian Arald's taking care of this right now. Waiting for the thumbs up. Do I believe the NFL is more of a top-heavy league or effective depth? Well, I think it's both. I think that you need stars to really move the needle, but you better have effective depth to support the stars. The glory of the sport of football is that it is an extremely collective sport. You can't just have 1 or 2 stars like in basketball and call it a day. Yeah, I mean, you've got to have all, and it's 69 guys in the building. It's the 53 on the active roster. It's the 16 on the practice squad. They can be called up at any time. You got to have everybody pulling weight in the right direction. And you have to have the offensive line doing its job, which is very different from the running back's job, which is very different from what the QBs have to do, orchestrating everything, different than the receivers or anybody on defense. So you've got to have quality depth. You've got to have the drivers. You have to have the top heavy star power. And the 49ers believe they have a nice mix of both because it gets too expensive if everything is a star, right? Can't be paying everybody on that 53-man roster a star salary. You have to find a way to make it efficient, but combine it with the guys that you do pay. 49ers have been decently happy with Robert Beal. I've gotten the sense he's really athletic, talented, but he hasn't been out there all too much. He just returned to practice in the Raiders practices a week ago. So give Robert Beal a little bit more time. 5th-round pick for the 49ers. And, you know, there's going to be a chance to show out in these next 2 preseason games. Somebody asking who number 22 is at returner as Deshaun Jameson, undrafted free agent DB out of Texas, has really impressed them. Can play inside, outside. They're experimenting with him at both positions, slot and outside corner, but also they're experimenting with Deshaun Jameson as a returner. He was really good at Texas, and I thought that he was shifty for the 49ers the other day. What 2 or 3 players absolutely need to shine Saturday in my eyes? Well, it would help Trey Lance if he did. I don't know if he absolutely needs to, but that'd be great. I think Isaiah Oliver can really help himself if he does play well for the 49ers. And I think, you know, they're going to be playing, I think, some more starters up front, at least for the start of the game. See how Javon Kinlaw factors in. He was kind of so-so in the last game. People are expecting more, though, out of him because he's finally healthy this year. Let's see how Kinlaw looks in his second crack at it this preseason. Jake Moody looks good in practice. The 49ers actually iced him today. Special teams coordinator Brian Schneider called timeout before one of Jake Moody's kicks. They iced him, and he ended up making it. Remember, Josh McDaniels of the Raiders iced Moody twice last week. That was very surprising, but it worked for the Raiders. He went over 2. Raiders doing Raiders things, trying to throw off a rookie kicker's confidence before he's even able to build it. I mean, if Moody doesn't pan out in the NFL, Raiders might look back on that and take credit for screwing with the 49ers big time. Drake Jackson, almost back out of practice. He's working with his pads on the side. He's not working in team drills, but him and Kalia Davis, Drake Jackson and Kalia Davis are both working with pads, smashing the sled, doing all that good stuff. So should see him back from his hamstring injury very, very soon. Kinlaw, this is according to, how do you pronounce your screen name? Is it Technic Chic or Technics Chick? I'm not sure. Anyway, Kinlaw is hit or miss, so it would be helpful for him to have a good game. He has some insane athletic plays sometimes, and he gets washed out easily sometimes. Yeah, I mean, high ceiling, low floor kind of thing. You got to make sure that you raise the floor. Um, so that I always use the metaphor. If you raise the floor, it's a higher jumping off point to touch a taller ceiling for a player. So Javon Kinlaw, he's a tall man himself. So we'll see if he can leverage some of this better health into better play as the preseason progresses. What difference schematically do you see with the 49ers defense transition from D'Amico Ryans to Steve Wilks? I see more exotic coverages on the back end. We might see a double nickel situation. Isaiah Oliver, kind of a glorified linebacker, 205, 210 pounds, combined with those cornerback rotations to get Diamaro Lenore in there in the nickel or whoever, Deshaun Jameson, another candidate. So more exotic rotations on the back end combined with a little bit more blitzing from the 49ers. It's another thing. I think Isaiah Oliver is a good blitzer. So I think you look at this defense, they're going to be doing more schematically complicated things than they have in the past on the back end. And they just have to make sure they stay disciplined enough, even with these blitzes, to justify the risk reward equation, right? There's higher risk with blitzes, higher reward. You got to make sure that you do get that higher reward because you don't want that risk to blow up in your face. I mean, it's always a battle. I mean, these are two physical backs, Ty Davis Price, Jordan Mason. I heard that JT O'Sullivan wasn't too happy with Ty Davis Price's pass blocking against the Raiders. That's something we're going to keep an eye on here moving forward against the Broncos and the Chargers for Ty Davis Price. But yeah, 220 pounders going at it. I mean, you're probably going to have both of them this season. The running back position is not for the faint of heart, especially if you play for the 49ers. A lot of injuries. So depth is a good thing for the 49ers at all positions, including running back. Who's making the cut at wide receiver? Ray out. Well, there's a chance Ray comes back right at the start of the season. Shanahan seems a little bit more optimistic than he did before. I think even if he's not coming back till week 4, week 5, 49ers will carry Ray McCloud on the 53-man roster, so that way they can just put him on IR, and it's short-term IR instead of season-ending IR. And then as soon as they put him on IR after the cut down, they could re-sign somebody that they cut. I don't know who it's going to be. I still think it's way too early to talk about definitive stuff like that. They have other good receivers on this team who have been shown out in training camp. Willie Snead has the catch of camp, right? The one to end practice from Trey Lance. Tay Martin looks a whole lot like Kendrick Bourne did in his prime with the 49ers. Isaiah Winstead has been making some plays for this football team. So is Chris Conley, who seems to have the best rapport with Trey Lance. So the 49ers have a lot of options here, but the cut down's not until August 29th. That's about 12 days from now. So we can't really firmly predict who's going to make the team. I can just give you some of the options. You can watch them over the next 2 weeks. Yeah, nobody knows how Trey Lance is going to perform in the future. We've hardly seen him. That's the thing. So keep your options open if you're the 49ers. Unless you're blown away by an offer, you can keep them open for right now, especially for the next 2 preseason games. As I've said all offseason, the 49ers QB situation will work itself out organically. There's been way too much stressing over something that is going to work itself out organically. This is really interesting to me because Graham and Winters are both playing really well, and 49ers linebackers have a reputation. I know Tennessee's in love with Azeez Al-Shire. The 49ers cut one of these guys, I think one of these guys will get scooped up by another team because they, 6th and 7th round draft picks, Winters and Graham respectively. But once you've been with the 49ers for an offseason, you have the pedigree. And if the 49ers, if you showed out for the Niners, which both of these guys have showed out so far, somebody's going to swoop in and pick you up. I think that's almost a given. So I think they try to make sure both of these players make the 53-man roster. That's my latest projection. 49ers have a new yak monster in Ronnie Bell. Absolutely. I mean, that jet sweep that they ran to Ronnie Bell was revelatory to me. 2 broken tackles. Doesn't really look like he has the frame to do that kind of stuff like Deebo Samuel, but he's got great balance, great body control. And to me, Ronnie Bell's on the inside of the roster picture for the 49ers for sure now. Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you. Hello to those of you on the East Coast where it's 11:36 p.m. Any surprise cuts? So I wonder if Isaiah Oliver might be on the list, but I don't think so. They gave him 4 million guaranteed, and I don't think they hate his performance. I just think they realize they might need a little bit more in coverage, but I think there might still be some use for Isaiah Oliver in the 49ers secondary. 3 years of hearing about Trey's high ceiling. Where is it? Well, I I kind of don't know what to tell you, man. Like he's been hurt. He's been hurt. Broke his finger, broke his ankle. Sometimes bad breaks happen. Ray asks about tight ends. Well, Cameron Latu is dropping a lot of passes, kicked the pylon today in frustration. You've got Kittle, you've got Werner, who was tight end 2 last year. You've got Ross Dwelly, who's been dependable, although a lower ceiling for several seasons. You've got Troy Fumagalli, who I thought looked good in the preseason opener against the Raiders. And then obviously you've got the rookies, Braden Willis and Cameron Latu. Latu's just dropping so many passes. The fumble against the Raiders, not good. I think Willis has looked a little bit more steady, but I think Latu might be a little bit further along as a blocker. So we'll see. They might only take 3 this year. It's a crowded roster. They've taken 4 in the past. Maybe they only take 3 this year. We will definitely have to get some intelligence on that as time goes along. Can any rookie make a first-year impact? Good question from Mike. Jake Moody, he better make a first-year impact. If not, the 49ers will not be happy with their third-round pick. But they do have insurance on the roster in Zane Gonzalez. Let's take a look at some of the possibilities here. I'm going to open up the 90-man depth chart for you. So the rookies are highlighted in yellow. Ronnie Bell, I'm talking about his great balance and body control. You know, Ronnie can also be a returner. He's in that mix. You never know when you're going to get down to LeBourne or Coletto. LeBourne, running back, Coletto, fullback. I have him as practice squad projections, but maybe the 49ers will have an injury that makes them play. Il Manning, probably not till next year. You never know, though. D. Winters, Jalen Graham. One of these two can grab the third linebacker spot by the end of the season for sure. Third safety spot. 49ers planning to play a third safety this year. Jair Brown. He can make an impact this year. So can Deshaun Jameson. They got a nice looking rookie class that might be able to fit very specifically into this team's needs. So hopefully that answers your question. Well, isn't this ironic? We're calling Trey Lance injury prone. This comment is right now. I don't know. I mean, maybe he just has had bad luck, but the problem is that Jimmy Garoppolo, his predecessor, the reason they picked Lance is because Garoppolo had too many injuries. Now Lance has too many injuries. So sometimes bad breaks just happen, man. It's football. Oh, no. Somebody wants to bring back Kyle Williams. That's not going to be a popular comment. To me, Mitch Wishnowski's looked decent after his injury. It was just like a tweaking of his back. He was lifting weights. It wasn't anything all too serious for Mitch Wishnowski that started him on NFI. D2 says that Darnold is playing for a QB1 spot next year. So you think that he's going to play well as QB2 this year and parlay that into a QB1 spot in 2024? It's 23, yeah. Yeah, totally possible. But, I mean, that would be a Kyle Shanahan rehabilitation project. We talk about the rehabilitation projects from Chris Kasarik on the defensive line. Well, maybe the 49ers can turn the QB room into a project like that. If Ayuk is an A-lister, they're going to keep him past this season. Thanks, Chris. Let's see if he continues to be an A-list type of player. Another 1,000-yard receiving season, that'd be somebody that the 49ers, in my opinion, will be willing to pay. Trey Sermon just run a 33-yard touchdown for Philadelphia. Congratulations to him in the preseason. Ambry Thomas might be on the field a lot this year. Ambry Thomas is playing the best football that he's played probably in his career. I think he's playing better practice now than he did in 21 because he didn't show up until late in that 21 season as a starter for the 49ers. But he's bigger, stronger, more physical, big pass breakup against George Kittle and OTAs. Ambry in the locker room in Vegas told me that was a turning point for him when he broke up a pass against George Kittle after he and George had jawed at each other before a possession earlier. So Ambry is, I think, playing well, and he's playing well enough to where Steve Wilks is talking about kicking Diamond Lenore inside, which is great flexibility for the 49ers. So I think that's the deal. That answers your question. The 49ers have to hope that this keeps up and that Ambry Thomas continues muscling up, because that's been his biggest weakness so far in the NFL. How will the 49ers manage the cap next year? Well, let's talk about that after the Bosa deal is finally done, which I expect to happen here at some point in the next 3 weeks. But once Bosa's signed and we see the structure of that and how big of a cap impact it has on 2024, we can start projecting who the 49ers will cut, who they'll keep, how they'll field the most efficient roster possible. I mean, Bosa's going to earn $30 million a year. I don't think that they're penny pinching either way. I think the 49ers are being smart and Bosa's being smart. Again, it doesn't have to be a bad guy in a business decision. The 49ers could be out there trying to build as financially sustainable of a roster as possible because the salary cap is very real. And Bosa could be out there trying to secure as good of a future for his family as possible, because you might as well cash out when you're in your prime. Both sides, business interests. They're playing a game of chicken. You generally don't swerve in a game of chicken until the two cars get close. Two cars don't get close until there's a deadline. That is the deadline, right? I don't think that the firm deadline here, maybe Bosa doesn't want to get into camp to work on his skills, but the very firm deadline seems to be week 1. Maybe he set an earlier deadline for himself. That would be nice for the 49ers. Maybe he hasn't. We'll know within 3 weeks, I think, which date is true. So somebody like Odom is established. Odom is a special teams ace. You don't really need to see him in preseason games, and he's a backup safety. So he's a veteran. He's been working off on the side for the 49ers, and I'd expect him. He led the NFL in special teams tackles last year. George Odom did. So his spot is secure. He's going to be showing out for the 49ers again on special teams. 49ers have a first-round draft pick next year, not this year, 2024. So, yeah, in April coming up. The 49ers hope Moody won't have the yips, but they can establish, or they can get some evidence first. Was last week a fluke, yes or no? Well, if it wasn't a fluke, then the 49ers will be pissed. They won't be very happy if it wasn't a fluke, but they do have Zane Gonzalez, another kicker on the roster, as insurance for the time being. If Moody turns it around and proves that last week was in fact a fluke, well, then you could package Zane Gonzalez in a potential trade to a kicker needy team. I think Brent Maher, the guy who missed all the extra points for the Cowboys, he's now with Denver. I think he missed a couple kicks this past weekend. Demetrius Flannigan-Foles, another special team stalwart, playing some first-team snaps with the linebackers. Does he make the team? All I can tell you is that linebacker is going to feature a lot of very tough decisions for the 49ers. Yes, I think Jawan Jennings is looking better this year. He made an awesome one-handed catch on a crosser earlier in camp. Jennings still pissing defenders off, pissed some Raiders defenders off. That's his forte, right? But I think he wants to score more this year. Remember, I interviewed Jawan Jennings on the channel. I was out at his football camp in Tennessee, and he said he wants to see the paint more, wants to score some more touchdowns this year. So it's a contract year for Jawan Jennings. He's making only $940,000 this year, so he wants to up that into a multi-million-dollar deal next year when he's a restricted free agent. So I do think that Jawan Jennings is motivated, and he looks strong out there on the football field. I'm not sure if the Niners are going to go into cap hell next year. Cap hell is when you really have to start cutting people. Let's wait to see if Nick Bosa's contract puts them in that kind of situation. And it probably won't be Bosa's contract, to be honest, that pushes them over the top, because that's going to be a worthwhile contract in all likelihood. It's dead weight from other players that can add up. Like, say they have to cut Isaiah Oliver. Well, that's not a huge deal, but it's a few million, and stuff like that will add up. So you ask if Debo's contract allows him to be moved. They can save some money if they do move Debo Samuel next year, yes. If he has a good year, somebody might want him. But if he has a good year, why would the 49ers want to trade away a star player that they signed to a long-term deal? And it looks like Debo's set to have a good year. He's coming in shape. So, talk like this. They have contract flexibility, yes, but do they want to use it? We'll see. And if they do want to use it, if they don't want Debo anymore, I'm not really sure what his value elsewhere would be. So it's an odd year. And in odd years, he's really showed out. 2019, 2021, 2023, he's in great shape again. Let's see this offense cook first. I mean, they stopped paying D Ford a long time ago. The thing is, there was dead money because the signing bonus is prorated over the lifetime of the contract. So when you cut a player early, it hits the books all at once with dead money. So yes, finally, D Ford's dead money is off the books, but he already received all of his signing bonus checks a long time ago. I don't think that I think Elijah Mitchell will be hard to move given the injury history right now for the 49ers. So, um, there's a chance for everybody, but they need running back depth, and Mitchell's a good running back. You have to compare the value to the 49ers of Elijah Mitchell versus the value to anybody else. And another team might be willing to send a low-round pick as a flyer for Elijah Mitchell, but is that worth the 49ers' time since he's such a good back when he's healthy for this team? I don't think so. Yep, Brandon Ayuk from Reno, and he went to Sierra College, which is in Rockland, which is where the 49ers in their glory days used to hold training camp. So Brandon Ayuk is from that 49ers territory. I would consider Reno to be 49ers territory, even though it's in Nevada. It's closer to the Bay Area than it is to Las Vegas. And he went to community college. His coach, Ben Noonan, out at Sierra College, is a big 49ers fan. Great stories from when the 49ers had the training camp out in Rockland. Do we see a different 49ers offense now that Kyle had a higher offseason to plan with Brock as QB1? Well, it looked pretty damn good with Brock as QB1 last year. Over 30 points per game, good efficiency. I think Christian McCaffrey is the big mismatch here. You could play anywhere. He spaces out defenses as a ultimate safety valve for quarterbacks. So I think you try to run what you did last year. Run it back if you're the 49ers and stay healthy at the quarterback position this time. That's the key. The most efficient edge rusher opposite Bosa in the NASCAR package. I think the 49ers are hoping it's Drake Jackson. Maybe Robert Beal comes out of nowhere later in the season after he develops a little bit. He's got the physical tools to be that light edge rusher. It's hard to tell in these practices because you can't tackle the quarterback live to the ground. So you can see guys beat tackles and do all that, but sacking a quarterback is the full package, right? You have to beat the offensive lineman. You have to get to the QB. You have to bring the QB down. There's something about the total package that's really important. And I'm looking forward to evaluating more on Saturday and then the following Friday. Yeah, it is not cool at this time of the year in Rockland. I know the 49ers are really bullish on Brock Purdy. I'm just going to sit back and wait to see how this plays out. I can tell you the 49ers are getting Purdy at less than $1 million this year, which is amazing value for their QB1. This is the big question for the 49ers offensive line. Is Colton McKivitz going to hold up? It's the money question for sure. I don't know. At right tackle, the 49ers were mediocre in pass protection under Mike McGlinchey. They weren't very good at right guard last year, but they think Spencer Burford has a lot of upside. So if Burford gets better and McGlinchey can be a better pass protector than Mike McGlinchey, that could take the 49ers offense to another level. That's a spot to watch, but it's also a lower floor spot since we don't know what Colton McKivitz is going to do under a bigger spotlight. O-line is a concern for every single team. I think their starting five should be fine if Colton McKivitz treads water. I'm not sure about the 49ers depth. I think it should be a concern everywhere. People love to blame quarterbacks for everything. I think the offensive line can really help out QBs. We haven't seen Trent Williams age over the past 3 years. I mean, he's been the number one graded tackle in all of football. He's 35 now. 49ers hope that decline won't start yet, but it is possible. So they obviously do have to be on the lookout for Trent Williams and age meeting. And because of that, I think they're going to draft a tackle in April. Even if Trent Williams is the best tackle in football again, it's always good to have a contingency plan for the future. And also, you could plug him in the right tackle, this new tackle, while Trent finishes out his career on the left. I don't think anybody, if the 49ers keep on winning and Trey Lance doesn't pan out, nobody's going to be getting real heat. I mean, people on Twitter are going to be complaining about stuff, but here's the thing. The NFL draft and a team's performance is like a stock portfolio, right? You don't judge your broker based on the one stock that he picked that tanked, that didn't do well. You judge your broker based on the overall return of the portfolio, because you're never going to hit on all your draft picks. Even first round picks have only like a 50% success rate. So it's about the full package. And the 49ers full package has been great. Brock Purdy is part of the full package. Jawan Jennings is part of the full package. Nick Bosa is part of the full package. That's been great. So you're ultimately judged by wins and losses, not by who you picked in the draft specifically. Obviously, who you picked in the draft is correlated to wins and losses, but individual picks can be made up for. So if Trey doesn't work out, nobody needs to take the heat if the 49ers keep on winning. Just how this works in the NFL. People are way too obsessed with the draft. They should be a little bit more focused on actual wins and losses. Jamie hopes that Trey has a better performance against Denver. McGlinchey was mediocre in pass blocking, but amazing in run blocking. Does Colton seem to have at least the run blocking now? No, I don't think Colton's going to be as good of a run blocker as McGlinchey. You got to give Mike credit. But I think they really believe that he can be a better pass blocker than Mike McGlinchey. And that would be a nice upgrade for the 49ers, because that's important. That's held them back a little bit. That's for sure. I don't know. Has my audio gone out? You're the only one complaining here. Maybe it was you. I'm speaking. My mic seems to be working here. So I think the audio is working. Yeah. It was on your end. That's all good. Good viewer, Nigel Crane. We see you a lot here. Thank you for watching. Trey just needs more reps. Unfortunately, it's just going to be hard to get those game reps, but practice reps are practice reps, and you can get something out of them. So, again, option power is a good thing for the 49ers. You don't just give it away for free, especially at a position as important as quarterback. You continue to allow things to develop organically. Thank you, guys. I see the audio is fine. Thank you. Appreciate it. Kinlaw didn't have a great game. Thought he was mediocre, but I mean, he's been doing well in practice. He's healthy. And I just urge people, hold off the judgment on Kinlaw until he's playing with Javon Hargrave. He's playing with Nick Bosa. He's playing with Eric Armstead, because Kinlaw is no longer a starter. He's no longer a focus piece. He's a supplementary piece, and supplementary pieces play off of your blue chip pieces. So that's something to keep an eye on. I do think Bosa will be back for week 1. Yes. 49ers might run a surprise read option with Purdy, but it won't be a staple part of their offense. That's for sure. They ran one with CJ Beathard back in 2020 against Arizona. Purdy's got a little bit better burst than CJ Beathard. The long speed, though, might be about the same as CJ's. All right, guys. Thank you so much. 49 minutes. That was the goal. We've made it 49 minutes. Everybody like the video, sub to the channel, hit that notification icon. Hopefully you liked all the content today. More coming soon. We'll talk to you later. Bye now.